Great. Thank you all for being here. If we haven't met yet in person, I'm Maria Bernier. My pronouns are she and her. I am the State Data Coordinator for the Connecticut State Library, and we are here today to talk about your data and how to use it, not just when you're advocating for your budget, but pretty much anytime, year-round. There's a lot of information in there that you can use for your own planning purposes and advocacy, and just knowing what's going on and helping you manage your libraries and your departments. So that's what we're here for today. And I always like to start with a reminder about our state annual report and why we do that. Sometimes it's for our own purposes in Connecticut, but really it's to collect data that we are sending to the Institute of Museum and Library Services for their public library survey. And that is a nationwide survey, every state and every territory. So all of the libraries nationwide are answering this set of questions. We're sharing the same questions. So it's sort of an apples to apples in a way, kind of comparison across the country. But each state is allowed to add their own questions for our own purposes. And we have done that in Connecticut. And that's a little bit more transparent this year, where you can see actually in the annual report which questions are federal and which questions are Connecticut questions. So it's a great amount of data, and my predecessor, Tom Newman, set me up with these amazing charts and spreadsheets and tools so that you can take all of those numbers and smush them into ways that are actually meaningful visually for you and your funders and help you tell a story for your local advocacy. So we can use our data any way we want to in Connecticut to really tell our story, and that's what we're doing. Okay, we're going to take a long look today at this LibGuide. You don't have to write down the link. I'm going to send it to you in an email at about noon today. You can write it down if you want to. But that LibGuide includes basically everything related to statistics and data. And because we're librarians, we've shoved it all into one place, and it's this huge reference book of stuff, and it's detailed. We're going to spend some time looking at the guide and seeing what's there. But preliminarily, it's our most recent annual data, which we call a statistical profile. That's the terminology. But you'll also find there the most recent annual report form, which you're probably familiar with. You go there, you download the annual report form, you fill it in and send it to me. It's got all the instructions and the definitions right there on one page. We also have some really fabulous chart and report creators that Tom created, and those are all linked there. And I update those each year with the new information. So they are right now up to date with fiscal year 21 data. And we have a tab, a page with some fact flyers that you can get from me to help advocate for your library as well. So that's all on one LibGuide. And in fact, we are gonna just pop on over there. Let's see if my link actually works. Great. And just as a reminder, I am gonna talk at you for a solid hour here, right? So manage yourselves as you need to. If you need to make funny faces or stand up or jump around or whatever you need to do to stay engaged and stay listening, please do that, because I cannot see you. So do whatever you need to do. And actually, I want to start here on our Division of Library Development homepage. So this is really our website, our DLD website, and we might call it LibGuides, we might call it our homepage, but this is the gist of it. You can come up here at this top menu. This top navigation menu is on every single page. And so you can find our core services right here under services. And if you scroll down, library statistics is right there. So you can find it no matter where you are on our LibGuides. Or if you're on our homepage, again, all of our core services and programs are over here on the top left box. You can find library statistics right here. And then if you're just sort of stuck and you're like, Maria, I just can't find it, you can also use this search bar that's on top of every single LibGuide. So just type in statistics, and here's the main LibGuide right here, statistics for Connecticut Public Libraries. We're just going to pop over to the statistical profile. So this is what it all looks like. And like I said, it's dense. If you're familiar with LibGuides, you know that each of these tabs represents additional data, additional information, all hiding back there. So there's kind of a different page associated with each tab. And then on each page, you can have boxes with additional tabs. So there's layers on layers here, right? And sometimes it's a little tricky to find stuff. So just dig around. You're not going to break it. You can click wherever you want. You're not going to change anything, right? It's my LibGuide. You're not going to fix it. So just play around with it and find what you want. But we're going to start today on this very first tab, Statistical Profile. That's what we're familiar with. The annual report, we're not really going to dig into. That's a completely different webinar, but you're probably familiar with that. And if not, I will have further webinars later this spring and summer for you. This chart and report creators tab, we're going to spend a little time in there. Those are the Excel files that are really fun. This data visualization tab is one that I just brought back a few weeks ago, and it's sort of showing the same data and the same numbers, but using a different interface called Tableau. That's an online tool for data visualization. So a lot of the same information, but it looks a little bit different, and you can play around with that offline if you want, and just see how that compares to the chart and report creators. Then there's a tab here for other stats that you might find on the internet. That's a great place to look if you're putting together a grant report or some kind of argument for additional funding. And then flyers and resources for advocacy here. We'll take a brief look at that at the end. So starting here with our statistical profile, I'm going to scroll down just a little bit. And in this box where we've got these tabs, the most recent statistical profile is always on the top, right? Because that's the one you're looking for. That's going to be the most evident. This little tab, 2021 statewide numbers, is kind of fun and handy if you're just looking for a brief number to throw into a report somewhere. If you're interested in circulation per capita statewide or total library visits statewide, that's right here, right on the 2021 statewide numbers. And if you're looking for profiles from past years, they're here. They're available to you, I think, back to 2011. And if you really need something earlier than that, just drop me an email and I will get that to you. But let's go back to the 2021 statistical profile. This is all the data that you guys sent me this past fall that I've crunched together and put into these spreadsheets. Thank goodness. This one right here, the statistical profile, this is the huge data set, all of the raw data put together in one place. So let's go ahead and open that. And when you open it, you're downloading a copy for yourself, right? So you are not messing with the original spreadsheet. You can do anything you want to this copy that you're downloading, and it's not going to affect anybody else. So do not worry. Whatever you do to this is yours. All right. So you're just play around with it. Have a good time with it. There's a lot you can do. All right. I'd like to point out that I am using the newest version of Excel. So some of the features may look a little different from the version you're using, but the features that I use are most likely present in your version, possibly in a slightly different place. But Excel is really good about maintaining that functionality from version to version. So just take a look for it. And I also find that this ribbon at the top of my screen gets in my way and takes up too much territory. So I'm just going to get rid of that for the next hour or so while we're doing this. If you ever need it back, you just go, click on one of these little guys and then pin. So that's an easy way to make a little more space on your screen when you're working from home and you have a little laptop. I do that a lot. All right, so we're just starting here with a profile. The very first thing you come to is an introduction. And there's actually information here. If you scroll down, there is a summary here that I put together. And this year's profile and last year's profile start with this red text reminding everybody in perpetuity that we had a pandemic, right? Last year and this year, the numbers are weird because libraries were closed, people weren't leaving their houses, it was madness. And so we just want to make sure that as people are using this data going forward, they remember that there was COVID, right? And that's why the numbers are so wonky for fiscal year 20 and 21. So that's here. Also, this year, a lot of the populations are different from what we've seen in the past years because we have actual census data now, right? Remember that 2020 census that kicked off right as we were closing our libraries? Those numbers are out. And so those are the numbers that I'm using for your local populations, and anytime there's sort of a per capita number or a percent number, it's related to the actual census data numbers for your town. So the populations may look a little different from how they had in past years. And then likewise, information about other children's populations. And then as you scroll down, all of this, how to use, this is pretty much what I'm going to be talking about this morning. And there are some reminders here for how to use things, the filter tool, the sorting tool that we're going to go over, some reminders, and then a glossary of some of the terminology that's used in the profile. So that's all here. That's on our first little tab down here, intro. Let's take a look at totals. Again, these are statewide totals for the past 6 fiscal years. Our most recent one is always going to be here on the right, and then we sort of backtrack. But this is a great way just to kind of look at numbers. If you need a number, right? If you just need you don't need a chart, you don't need a context, you just need a number. Just grab it here from the totals. There's a lot going on here in terms of collection, circulation, computer usage, income and expenditure. So that's here and available. And if we pop over to charts, these are all statewide charts. So think of them in that way. Again, they can help you provide context for a report or a presentation that you're giving to your funders. So this has all of the library's data smushed together into great big charts. And if you want to pop around by sort of sections, you can do that. I arranged them a little bit differently a year or two ago so that you can find things. Let's just take a look at library services. And you can see here statewide, right? The last 2 years, visitation is down, circulation's down, number of hours is down, program attendance, which had been going up, is down. So you can see sad trombone charts, but again, these are really helpful if your funders say, well, wait a minute, how come your visitation was down? You can say, look, everybody was down, right? The entire state was down. This one makes me sad. Our percent of statewide population with cards, this number has actually declined since I think 2008. And we are substantially below the nationwide average here. So I keep talking about this chart in hopes that we can eventually turn this around and bring the numbers back up. That's something we can work on. But here's some great, just statewide contextual things: circulation by audience, which means the age, by the format, so whether it's video, ebooks, that kind of thing. So great charts here, very helpful. You can scroll through. I'm not going to take the time to scroll through because we've got bigger things to look at. But this right here, library data, is really the gold mine here. So this is huge. This is a really big sheet, right? Because there's a row for every single library that reported, and that's in fact 196 rows with all the top rows. And we've got 369 columns, so it just keeps going and going and going to the right. So there's a column for every question in the annual report, as well as some questions that are sort of calculated. And you'll find those in red here. So anytime there's something that is a per capita number or a percentage, that's something that I have calculated within this spreadsheet. It's based on the data you give me, but it's also calculated using probably population or some other percentages. And you'll know which ones those are because they're in red, just like that square feet per capita. Let's see, the table of contents here is also helpful. So if you just wanted to find, again, that information, that data on programs, you can click on programs here and it'll hop you to the program section within the profile. And if you want to go back, you just return, nope, not the title page. We can go back to buildings and administration. You can pop over to collections. So you can just move around the spreadsheet a little bit more easily. That's how to get around. And then I added these questions in the top row last year. So these are the question numbers from the annual report. So if you said, for instance, I know in the annual report, I've got it in front of me, I answered these questions about children's programming. Where is that in the spreadsheet? So let's click on programs, and then you can right up here, just look for the question numbers to find the data comparing your library with others for those specific questions. All right, some other things I want to point out. These rows right here for statewide average, median, statewide total, and the number of libraries that reported an answer to this question. Again, this is really helpful. So there may be some, let's try library services. Yeah, see if I hop around, there may be some cases where there's a statewide average, right? For how many hours the libraries are open. There's a median, there's a total number of hours the libraries are open. And then there were 177 libraries that answered this question. So those are these rows right here. They can be really useful as you're, again, putting some kind of context to your presentation where you might say, oh my gosh, you guys, we were significantly above the statewide average or above the median in our state or below, right? If you want to try and get more money. So use those to your advantage. Those are helpful. You can dig around in there a little bit as you go along. And I want to explain the difference between average and median. So average is that concept we're familiar, right, with, you know, where everybody reports, we add them all up, we divide by the number of libraries that report, right? So you get the average. Sometimes useful. But sometimes there may be an outlier in the data, right? And this can happen with, say, for instance, a library materials budget. Maybe there are a couple libraries in the state that have these incredible budgets, right, for buying stuff, and they are significantly higher than everybody else. And that number skews our average higher than it really should be. So that's when the median is helpful. And the median is just the number in the middle that reported, right? So you take 100 responses and you sort of nibble in from each end, and whatever number is in the middle is your median. And it's a little bit different from the average. You'll see that as you scroll through. So use that to your advantage as well. Emily, I see your question in the chat. How many total Connecticut libraries versus how many reporting? We had 177 libraries submit their report this year, and that's sort of where it is. 177, 178 submit their report. But if we pop back to our LibGuide here, here's how many libraries there are in the state, and you kind of have to hedge, right? So there are 165 principal libraries, there's some non-principals, there's some branches. I generally say that there are 191 total public libraries if we're looking at the administrative unit. So in this case, Hartford would count as one instead of counting as one plus all the branches. So that's how we sort of count it. I really would say there's 191. Many of these are smaller non-principal libraries, and they just don't have the capacity to submit their reports. So that's a difference. You got it, Emily. All right, what else do I want to tell you? The sort and filter tool. So row 13, right here, sort and filter tool. This is going to make your life so much easier once you play around with this. There are so many ways to use it. And let's just, for example, talk about population. So if I click on the little sort and filter tool in the population column B, I'm gonna just say, let me filter this. I want to find populations that are greater than 4,000 and less than or equal to 6,000. So this is how you can really narrow down the list to find libraries that are similar to yours, either based on population or wealth rank or county. Like any of these columns and rows, you can sort this way to narrow it down a little bit. All right, how come that didn't work? Oh, because I'm seeing Ansonia. Dadgummit. Clear filter. What did I do wrong? Did I type it wrong while I was talking to you? Did I say 60,000 while I was typing to you? Let's see, 4,000 and 6,000. Oh, interesting. I'm going to have to figure out why that filter is not working the way that it's supposed to, because I could swear to you that it was working when I did this workshop. Oh, man.
No, I think, Maria, if you go do the same thing, I think we're missing a, like, see the under the and or that box, yeah, that wasn't filled out.
Isn't that weird? Thank you, Doug.
Sure. I mean, I think so.
No. What in the world? Let's try our angelic ranking. Greater than, let's just say greater than 60. Okay, for some reason that worked. Okay, I apologize, you guys. In theory, that will work when you download it. All right, so I'm gonna clear that filter. Where it also comes in handy is for county or any column that has a controlled vocabulary, right? So you can sort of pick and choose. I don't want all counties. Maybe I just want New London and Middlesex counties. And that's going to be my comparison group. So that's how you could use a filter in theory, and then you can clear your filter. A question in the chat, is there a ranking of libraries by population? So if you just wanted to sort them by population, you could come over to column B for population and sort smallest to largest, and you would see them right there. So that's how you could figure out who's the smallest and who's the biggest. But I'm going to put everybody back in alphabetical order here. And I also want to show you, what do I want to tell you? No, I want to tell you these columns about population, wealth ranking, county, and CLA region are going to be helpful for you. So play around with those, just refining and focusing your data as you're searching through here. Okay, let's think about some specific questions that I sometimes get from libraries. They say, how do I figure out library materials expenditures per capita? Because you know what you're spending, right? And you can get sort of the bulk numbers from other libraries. What are they spending? But what does that mean per capita, per person, per resident in town? So let's scroll a little bit down to expenditures. And that's, again, one of these red questions that have been calculated in the spreadsheet here, library materials per capita. And you can see it here. And that's when, again, you can use these filters to say, okay, let me just check on library materials per capita in my county and see what that's doing. So, and then you can sort of sort those largest to smallest and see who's got a lot of money to spend on library materials. Rock on, that's always fun. Another question I get is, what libraries are fine free? And that's been such a great conversation on Contact and in so many different places, just as the number of libraries that are going fine free is increasing. And if you have done the annual report, you remember there is not a question about, is your library fine free? Because that means different things in different places, right? Where you might be like 99.5% fine free and you're still having to charge fines on like museum passes or something. But for the most part, your materials are fine free. You're doing automated renewals. It's all fabulous. So that's why we ask instead about your typical book fine and your typical DVD fine. And those are located in the income and revenue section. And if we scroll a little bit, it's these purple columns, typical book fine and typical DVD fine. And so what we want to do here is pick the libraries that have 0 as their typical book fine and 0 as their typical DVD fine. And that gives us a list of libraries over here. And if you kind of scroll down and capture them all, you can see down here that that count is right now 64 libraries reporting in their annual report that they charge $0 for a book fine and a DVD fine. So that's how we kind of couch the terminology and couch the numbers as we're reporting those. All right, I want to go home and I want to clear all of my filters. And I want to put these back in order by alphabetical. And I also want to show you salary information, because that can be really helpful both for directors who may be advocating for a new position and trying to figure out salaries, or advocating for raises, or it may be useful for somebody who is investigating a new job and wants to find out what's the going market rate for me right now for somebody with my position. So that's under personnel. And if we scroll again to the right, we'll find the salaries for specific positions. And let's take a look at the children's librarians. So say you're in this wonderful place where you get to hire a brand new children's librarian. You've never had one before. You're trying to figure out, how much would I pay this person? So you know that you want to get a full-time librarian. So let's focus. We're going to look under hours per week, and we're going to use our filter, and we're going to pick every position that is 35 hours or more, because at our library, that's what qualifies as full-time. And because this is really a text field instead of a number field, you do have to go through and click hand by hand. You can't use a number filter. But here we've selected, if I scroll down, you can see all of the libraries that have a full-time children's librarian. And that's fabulous. There's a lot of them, but maybe they're all over the state. So maybe I really want to focus on my county. And let's say, again, I'm in Middlesex County. And now I've got a much shorter list of libraries that have full-time children's librarians. And I can start to see a range of salaries that they're paying this position. And that gives me sort of a ballpark to work within. And if I were a children's librarian looking for a job, this might give me a sense of what I might be offered going into that position, or perhaps where I could use a starting point to negotiate up from. So the salary information is really helpful. And I appreciate everybody who sends me that in the annual report, because it really gets used by a lot of people. I don't even know how many people, right? Because I don't check. I don't know how many people download the profile. So that's how you would grab this information. And I also meant to point out to you, if you wanted to sort of capture that for a report. So say you've got all of this data, and how do you export it? So there are a couple different things you could do. I love my little snipping tool down here. And this is some software built onto most computers. There's a new, sometimes you can just do a little snipping tool where you've got the data that you want pulled up on your screen, and you can just make a picture of it that you can then embed into a Word document. That's one way to do it. Another option is to go ahead and select the cells that you want. You'll go ahead and copy them, open a new spreadsheet, paste them into the spreadsheet, and then go ahead and copy the other cells, paste them in, make them look nice and pretty. But then you've got something that you can present in a different way. You can sort that in a different way. It's in a separate spreadsheet. So it's really those little data points that you're focused on, not the 369 columns that you don't really want people to get distracted by. You want them to focus on your data. So you can do that with pretty much anything. Just grab it and put it into another spreadsheet and play around with it. Okay, so those are some ways that people are using this statistical profile data. So again, remember, this is just 1 year's worth of data, and it's all the data for 1 year. Fabulous, good stuff. As a reminder, those profiles are available from past years, but sometimes you need a little more, right? Like maybe you need a more historical perspective on what's been happening. So that's where these statistics for the past, 25, 26 years come in handy. These are trends over time. So we're going to go ahead and open that spreadsheet. And again, this is my copy. Whatever I do to this, I'm not messing with anybody else's copy. And you can see right here, these are all organized by year, all the way back to 1996. That's probably more information than you want. So what you're going to do is use the filter tool here, unselect all, and then you're just going to pick your library. Ah, that's better, right? So now I'm just seeing my library, one line for each year, and then very limited specific data points for all of those years. So this is really only 28 columns, right? That's significantly smaller. It's really focused, but it does have some of these really helpful numbers about per capita, and per capita numbers, percentage numbers that are built in here. So these are really great comparisons. You can use these to take a look at your own library's changes over time to see how maybe circulation has changed over time, reference the number of card holders, total registered borrowers, registrations per capita served. Again, statewide, these numbers are decreasing. So I encourage you guys to work on reversing that. But that's how you would find your library's information for those specific years, 1996 to 2021. That's a great one if you're a new director or perhaps new as a department head, just to take a quick look at that and see what's been happening. Really great, helpful data. And there's a way that we can chart that. I've got another place to show you where that's all charted. All right, let me make sure that's what I wanted to show you here. Yep. Okay, now as we scroll down a little bit here, I also want to point out statistical trends in Connecticut public libraries for this fiscal year. This, I think, is a 6-page document, but it really let me delve into what's been happening in our libraries across the state for the past year, and then sort of again for the past 10 to 25 years, just looking at what's been going up, what's been going down, contextualizing. So take a look at that. It's pretty cool. These are some statewide trend charts. Again, if you need a little bit more context for a report, what's been happening statewide with circulation, SAD, borrow it, all of that stuff. So because I have so many numbers back to 1996, right? I can slice them and dice them in a million different ways. And that's what you're seeing right now. So to recap, that's our statistical profile. That's what we're seeing for this year, as well as a little bit of Excel information from past years. Now I want to go into the chart and report creators, because again, this is a gold mine for you guys. This is where you can really get the great visuals to show to your funders. So the very first one here, the chart and report creator for this most recent fiscal year. So I try to put the description there so you understand what it is you're clicking on. Again, all of these different spreadsheets have so much data in them. All right, we want that one to go away. Here we are. So this is our chart and report creator for fiscal year 2021. There are a number of different ways you can use this. What you're going to start with is just picking your library here. And first, take a look on the right here. There's nothing filled in here, right? This looks like nothing. But if I pick my library, and we're going to pick Meriden, I hope you can see this. It's a little bit teeny. Let me blow it up a little bit more. Okay, there we go. That's slightly easier to see. So I picked Meriden, and now you can see over here on the right, this information, this table is filled in. What it did was it took Meriden and said, let me find the towns with population around Meriden. And then let me also identify towns with angelic wealth rankings near Meriden. Let me take this down a little bit. There we go. So that you can find roughly equivalent libraries across the state in terms of population and wealth ranking. So these aren't necessarily your neighbors. They're not necessarily ones that you would have thought of comparing, but in terms of the community you're serving, they may be fairly similar. So they could be some really interesting comparison points. So if I were Meriden, maybe I would want to compare with East Hartford, because we have, wow, really similar wealth ranking, roughly similar population. I would want to pick West Haven, also oddly similar, not anywhere near me. And maybe I want to pick New Britain as a comparison point. And you could enter those comparison libraries right in here and find some charts. But instead, we're going to start with population. So Meriden has a population, if we take a notice here, of 60,794. And right here is information about the default population groupings. So they're sort of grouped all the municipalities with populations up to 5,000, and then 5,000 to 10,000, 10 to 17. You get the gist, right? So Meriden is going to fall into a group of municipalities with populations over 50,000. Okay, but that puts us into some pretty big game territory. And so if I just pick the general charts and it puts me into that grouping with all those other towns with maybe 138,000 people, now I'm feeling like maybe I'm not really with my peer group, right? So my library is always going to be first as we look at these charts. And again, let me show you, these are grouped slightly up here under contents by their theme. But as we scroll down each of these charts, I'm going to find my library listed first, then I'm going to find the average for this population group, and then I'm going to find the average statewide. And there are many charts here. Again, scroll through, see what the stories are telling you as you go. Interesting, right? So maybe this is not necessarily the group that I want to compare myself to. Or maybe I want to say, hey, you guys, look, I am as busy as just about anybody. My library is slammed constantly, but we're not getting the funding that all these other comparable libraries are getting. And I would love to get a little more funding. So you can put these charts together in different ways to tell your story. That's how we're using population. But I want to go back to input. And I want to say, well, maybe wouldn't it be more fair if we sort of compared with the libraries above and below us, 50,000 to 70,000. That's really narrowing the population grouping and focusing a little bit more on municipalities that are more like Meriden. So now when we take a look at the charts and scroll down, it's a little bit different. Here's my library. Here's our average of the chosen population range. The wording changed a little bit here. And then again, the statewide average. So if you play around with these, just take a look at them, see again what they're telling you, what stories they're telling you. With 177 libraries reporting, there's at least 177 stories here, right? You've got to delve into your library and see what the data is telling you. I honestly have no idea. I haven't looked at everybody to see what's going on. Now let's take a look at all of the comparison libraries. I had to look up what's near Meriden because my Connecticut geography is still not so good. But we're going to add Cheshire to the list. Oops. And these little things are not easy to work with. I apologize. They will not let you scroll. I think that's like a weird Excel thing. It's really annoying and frustrating. And we want to pick, oh, I wanted to pick Berlin. Yeah, Berlin Peck, and we're going to pick Wallingford, which is way down at the bottom. Come to me, Wallingford. And I also want to add Southington. And if you were a really clever librarian, you would do this in alphabetical order, which I have not done. So now we've got our 5 direct comparisons. So I picked these because these are the towns that touch Meriden. And also Middlefield touches Meriden, but I don't feel like that's quite a comparison in a fair way. So I picked the ones that seemed a little bit more similar and put those in. And again, you can pick whichever 5 libraries you want here, right? Like you could pick the 4 corners and the one in the middle and do a comparison chart. But here we're going to hop over. And now in these comparison charts, again, I'm seeing my library first. And those 5 libraries I selected in the same order. And here's the average of those 5 compared to my library. So that'll show you some interesting stories as we go. Program attendance, rock on, Meriden, right? Exceeding the average for those 5 libraries. That's a nice one to hang on to there. Reference questions, circulation. And then as we scroll down, there's some great stuff here about income, operating income per capita. Wow, look at this 5 library average, right? So the towns surrounding Meriden, on average, are getting almost $60 per person for their library. Meriden's getting half of that. I feel like I'm going to go and advocate for Meriden to get an appropriation increase based on that. Come on, you guys. Come on, funders, help me out here, right? Municipal appropriation per capita, municipal revenues per capita. There's a ton of numbers in here, right? So you just grab the numbers that are going to be helpful for you in terms of telling your story. All right. And how do we use this? So say, for instance, that you wanted to use this chart in your presentation. See how when I clicked on it, it's sort of highlighted over here, right? Now it's all highlighted. It's got those little round guys around it. I'm gonna copy that. I'm gonna copy it, and I'm gonna just take it over to my Word document and paste it. And so if I right click, and you see these paste options here, what I actually want to do is paste it as a picture, so that now it's something that I can resize. I can use these funny little layout options to wrap text around it, and I can really put it into a Word document as part of my presentation to a board this way. But remember, it's just copy, paste, picture. So I'm going to right click and see my paste options, this one on the right, picture. The others are sort of options to bring the data with you, which gets messy after a while. So just paste it as a picture. That's going to be simplest. You can also paste it as a picture into a PowerPoint document if you wanted to do that, right? Like once it's a picture, you can stick it into pretty much any Microsoft thing. So that's how you would transfer the chart from Excel here into something that is a presentation that you're going to give to your funders. All right. So this is how we're using the chart and report creator. I also want to point out, if we go back to our input tab, the very first one, there are some cases where it's useful to compare municipalities versus specific libraries. And this would be a case, Groton, you've got 3 libraries, right? If we smush you all together as Groton, that tells one story, versus breaking you up into 3 libraries that tells a different story. So just play with these, and let me show you what that looks like. Play with the charts, right? And see which ones are giving you the story you're looking for. So we picked Grotonville, and now it's showing municipality as Groton. So some general municipal charts here, and you can see it's the municipality, including those 3 libraries. So you can see, again, just sort of lumping the numbers together instead of separating them out. But if you wanted to separate them out, what you could do is go to the input, and just here in your comparison charts, choose those other specific libraries. In Groton, then you might want to pick, you know what, Stonington, New London, Ledyard, North Stonington. So do your local comparisons that way. So there are ways that you can play around with this. Okay, and then evaluation charts. These are based on municipality, the median for that population group, the median for that wealth group, and the median statewide. So also take a look at evaluation charts. Click on everything, right? Click, click, click. You're not going to mess it up. And if you mess it up, just undo, right? Undo. That's the magic of Microsoft products. Undo it and you're back where you were. So play around with all these little tabs at the bottom. See what's what. The report here. Come on, report. This is sometimes useful, and this had been giving me troubles in last year, but it's back this year. And this is, again, the same information, right? But it's in a table. It's a numerical format instead of as a chart. So maybe some people really like the numbers, right? They love to see the numbers and how your library compares just with that. And other people may like the pictures. So you pick whatever is going to be more helpful for you based on what you know about your funders and your finance board and how all that works. So there's a lot here. Yes. I'm glad, Wendy. I'm so glad you're here, because I did that especially for you. I figured out the formula to make that work. It was like a big breakthrough day at home. It was really awesome. Okay. We're going to hop out of this particular chart and report creator. Yep. And we are going to instead scroll down and do this one, the individual library trends over time chart and report creator. And again, this is a ton of information, either 12 years or 26 years worth of charts. And this is really cool historical information. All right, there we go. Takes a little while to download. These are very cool. So you're not comparing with anybody else at this point, right? With this chart and report creator, you are only looking at what's happening at your library over time. So let's see, what did I want to try? Oh, I wanted to show you this one. And again, these are selected data fields, right? There's not enough room to do 369 charts, right? So these are selected data points, but I wanted to show you the 12-year trends. As we scroll down, these are using medians. So be careful that with your terminology as you're explaining to your funders, we're using medians. But now we're looking at one library's circulation per capita over time for the past 11 years. And you can see how that changes. So this first chart is always just my library. And then the second chart on the right here is putting that into context, right? So the red line is my library. And now I'm seeing how my trend compares with similar wealth towns, similar size towns based on population, and the statewide median. And I wanted to show you this one because there was a construction project happening at this library for a couple of years. And you'll see as you go through the charts, there's a dip in pretty much everything for those 2 years. So that's something, oh, and a corresponding e-media circ increase for those 2 years. I love that. So you'll want to contextualize that too for your funders. This is a really helpful information for new directors to try to understand, all right, what happened those 2 years? Like, you know, was everybody sick? Like what was going on? No, there was actually a construction project, and you can see that reflected in the data that the library collected for those couple of years. Really cool. And often I can tell when there's been a change of director or a change of department head based on how the charts look. Sometimes there's a slowly increasing chart for many years, and then all of a sudden a new director comes on board and says, I have no idea where they got those numbers. I'm gonna try and give you the numbers that I think you're actually asking for. And there may be a sort of a reset in all of the charts that year when the new director comes on or when the new department head comes on. And that's okay. What I would love from you guys is both accuracy and consistency, right? And this is why, because you want to be able to have accurate and consistent numbers to provide to your funders so that you don't constantly have to explain, oh yeah, well, that's what happened then, or that's what happened then. You want to give them a sense of reliability and authenticity for your numbers. So that's why I talk about the annual report and getting me those real numbers that honestly represent what it is that's going on in your library. It all comes together, right? So that's very cool. Now, also, for instance, let's talk about how you change these charts, right? So maybe you say this one, book and serial circulation per capita. I want to grab that, but I want to change it before I put it in my presentation. And you can do that. You'll do it in Excel and make the changes here, and then you'll copy it into your Word document or your PowerPoint presentation. So one thing you might do is, I'm going to bring this ribbon back so we can use it more effectively. One thing you might do is change your chart design, right? Actually, a line chart is more effective for showing change over time. So I want to change this column chart into a line chart instead. Great. Oh, and you can see how my line, yep, same line, right? But this is helping me to show that change over time and how we had that dip. The dip is maybe a little bit more apparent now than it was. And maybe I want to change my title, and I want to say 2010 to 2021. And then maybe I want to change my color. Can I change my color for this? So that would be, sometimes if I double click it, yep, Yep, you see how this opened up on the right-hand side? I don't want the data point. I want to do the whole chart area. I want to do the series. I want to change that whole series, and I'm going to pick that sort of fill symbol, and I'm going to change the color and see if I can make it orange. And I'm going to change the markers to orange as well. And so now I've just got an orange line instead of a red line. Maybe I wanted to use our high school football team colors or something instead, right? And it's this really subtle way to talk about how your library is aligned with your community. You're paying attention. Probably your funders are not going to pick up on the fact that you're using the high school colors, but some savvy person will. So now I'm going to copy that. And when I come over to my Word document and I do right click, paste as a picture, there you go. Now it came over with the changes that I made. And now I can go ahead if I want to make it bigger, smaller, however I want to do that. Another thing I can do, you know what, maybe I want that whole thing to go away. Maybe I want to make this wider. You can do that, right? Do whatever you want, copy, paste it as a picture into your presentation, and you're good to go. So that's how you can play around with it in Excel, and just adjust it a little bit so it's a little more consistent with the visual representation that you want to give for your library. Okay. You guys are suspiciously quiet on the chat, and I think I'm telling you an awful lot and going really quickly. So I'm going to encourage you right now to send me questions in the chat. And I'm going to hop over to our LibGuides again. And what I want to show you is this tab, Flyers and Resources for Advocacy. Because there's great stuff here. My coworker Ashley and I have updated the flyers. So there are a few different versions here that you can get. And this just feeds your library's annual report data into a nifty little handout that you can give people. And Ashley put together a Canva template that she can share with you as we go along. I do want to point out over here on the left-hand column, where it says right here, how to use your data during budget season. This is today's entry right here. Right now it says register, and this is where I'm going to post the recording. So once we're done here, I'm going to upload the recording to YouTube, do a little yada, 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 add the link here. So this is going to turn into a recording link, just like the one did from a couple weeks ago. So at noon, when I send you an email with a link to where to find this recording and a link to our evaluation form, here's where you're going to find it. This is just going to say recording. So that's where you'll take a look. All right. And if you are interested, Ashley has a couple more webinars coming up, and you can register for those about just how to tweak your flyers here. So these are in Publisher. If you want to play around with Publisher, change the colors again, change the font, that's all totally doable. Likewise, in the Canva template, there's a lot you can play with. I have covered all of my information suspiciously quickly. I normally talk for the whole hour, so I am concerned that I have left something out, but I think I hit everything. Any other questions about Excel that I can show you, or the data that I can show you? I encourage you, just play around with it, right? We have some great tutorials available in Niche Academy, which is in our professional development LibGuides. And there's, right, you just Google and there's a ton of YouTube videos about how to use Excel and how to tweak things in Excel. And that's how I learned stuff too. So that's my favorite go-to. But I think I am going to go ahead and bring us back to the slideshow here. Put it on the ask thing, and then put my contact info, come back right here. So you can always email me, you can call me. We're working from home part-time still, so I don't always get those right away. So email is the best way to reach me. And if you wouldn't mind, at some point, either right now or in an hour when you get this link, go ahead and fill out that evaluation form, if I can pull that up. that would be helpful for me, because I like to know if there were things that you found particularly useful or that you would also like to see in this presentation, because that helps me refine and develop and make it better for the next time. So I love to hear your information. Fabulous, you guys. Can there be a best practices webinar on successful data narratives in the future? Isn't that a great idea? Thank you, Luis. I'm going to cogitate on that and how to do that. And I think what would be fun is to incorporate some directors or some libraries that have had success using this data in the past. And I can think of a particular case story where a library, local library, closed for a couple of years for construction. And then their funders said, well, but you don't really need like all of those people again. You don't need all those staff again when you reopen, right? Because, you know, your numbers have been down. And the library was actually able to look at the data, pick out other libraries that had had construction projects, and could document the increase in usage after the library reopened after construction, after a renovation, after an addition, and could show why, yes, in fact, all of our numbers do go up after we reopen. And in fact, we do need all of our staff, and you do need to give us more money so that we can pay our employees and hire more people, because we're going to be busy. So there are some really great stories for how people are using the information, and I just need to find them. So thank you for that idea. All right, and you guys, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. I'm going to go ahead and end our recording.